Hello and welcome to part 1 of A Thing I've Been Working On. Working title, Hero. Chapter 1. You are alive. No, wait, no, I'm not alive. No, indeed, very much not. Something else then, perhaps. Your master regards you, making his way down a line. You see to your left and right, and... you understand. Yes, you understand now why you do not feel cold or warm or the air shifting against your skin. It's because you have none. How precisely you can see it all, in fact, is quite the mystery, since you have no eyes and no eyelids, and you cannot close the eyes that you do not have. No, you cannot blink. Only white fields of bone determine the edges of what you can see. Good. Yes, the binding spell is strong. The master's voice reverberates through you. You both hear the voice, though you have no ears, and you feel it in your soul. Soul? No, you have no soul. You know this, but no, not but the fractured shards of something assembled to resemble what was once there. Was? Did you have a soul previously? You do not know. Yes, good. Report to the guard chief. You obey. The words resonate within everything that you are. You obey. You must. It is what you are. You obey. That is your role. You take the sword from the guard chief. It is old, but serviceable. The scabbard is tied to your pelvis with a leather strap rather than a belt, since you have no waist. You do not feel the rough, worn leather against your white bones, nor the cold stone on your feet, which you now realize do not entirely match. You three guard the interior east side corridor. The chief, a zombie capable of speech and enough thought to give orders and roles, it seems, taps a spot on a scrawled map. Kill anything that intrudes, and any undead not bearing this mark. The zombie speaks clearly, though its voice is rough, its flesh less willing to move than perhaps in life. Though you're not entirely sure what it meant by mark, which is when a hand is slapped to the side of your bare skull, rattling something inside your empty brain cavity. Another zombie, this one far less coherent, not moaning, but somewhat grunting with every shuffling step it takes, slaps a hand to the side of your head, and then shuffles on and slaps a hand to the next skeleton's head, this time knocking said skeleton's head clear off of its spine and clattering down onto the floor. The zombie simply pauses, leaning down with a grunt, and hands the skeleton back its head. After a moment, watched by the 8 other skeletons in line, the headless skeleton lifts its skull back to the end of its spine, where it slips from its bone hands and snaps back to where it is meant to be. You note that this is apparently something that you can do. Or hopefully you can. You'll see now that where the second zombie had slapped each of you, it left a bright blue handprint, having used some kind of powder from a bowl to mark each of you in turn. Bind, the guard chief says without any ceremony. And you feel. For the first time, you're pretty sure, you feel. It is searing, like the master's voice had been, which was not just hearing but something more fundamental. The blue powder adheres to you in a flash of pain. It sears into your very being. You feel the shape of yourself being transgressed upon. The tiny fractal shards of something that used to be, now composing what it is that you are, tremble and bend. And then it is gone. You see the blue marks on the other skeletons, and tiny flecks of blue that drifted into your eye sockets now, granting tiny spots of distinction to what would otherwise be a white void that is more than half of your vision. And, again, you obey. You follow along behind 2 other skeletons as you head to the spot that the zombie had pointed out on the map. You notice that they are slightly different to each other, not just in obvious ways. You don't just think that they might have been different people, and hence differently sized skeletons. No, rather, many of the bones in each one don't seem to fit so well. There will be 1 or 2 vertebrae on the one on the left that look the wrong size, or with slightly different colours, maybe somewhat yellower. You look down at your own hands as you walk, your bare feet clattering against the stone floor. Your hands look wrong. Or do they? And not just in the sense that they're bones now. Now? Were they ever not? The fact that you remain slightly alarmed by the fact that your hands are in fact bones is probably something you should take note of. Something else that you were rather alarmed by, though not to the same degree, is that you did not realize that there are quite so many bones in your hands. Little strange pebbly ones where the wrist connects to. No, in fact, where the wrist doesn't quite connect to. In fact, as you bend and flex your fingers, you see that the bones shift and roll against itself. You can hear a bit of grinding, which, since you cannot seem to feel anything, the bone against bone or your feet clacking against the floor, is again a bit alarming. And there simply doesn't seem to be anything that is connecting, one bone to another. You grip the last bone in your left forefinger with your right forefinger and thumb. And you pull. You don't like that at all. No, you don't like that at all, actually. There really wasn't as much of a pull as you felt like you should have needed to pull, and now... No, you don't like this at all. The strange fragments, the shards of a thing in the shape of the thing that perhaps was once somewhere, they tremble and shake. One of them is out of place. Literally. Oh. Well, of course. Well, yes, you feel wrong, incorrect. Not in pain, just wrong, because there's a piece of you that is supposed to be here, but it's over there, only inches away where you now hold it in your other hand. But it's in the wrong place. And so you feel a fragment of one of the fragments that is you out of place. Well, that's interesting. You hear a sharp clacking sound, a sudden clack of bone against stone. You jolt, looking up and around, and you find one of the other two skeletons standing behind a stone wall of the corridor. It holds a hand up. It had struck the wall to produce the sound, and now that you think about it, it was not the first time you heard said sound, but you had not processed it until now. Yeah. Sorry, you go to say, but no words come out, because, of course, you're just a skeleton. You watch then as the other skeleton turns and walks away. You think huffily. You follow the skeleton as it follows the other skeleton that is much further down the corridor. Hang on, how can you see right now? And not just in the sense that you don't have any eyes, you've already gone over that, but looking behind yourself, you realize that in the far distance there is a torch, or a sconce or something, illuminating the long hallway. But there should be so incredibly little light reaching this far, and yet you can see. Not well, but rather you understand that you should be able to see significantly less. Odd. You again note that the fact that you feel you should be able to see less in a moment when you've not. This is all very confusing. Again, you hear a increasingly frustrated clacking of stone against bone. You turn to find your skeletal comrade now giving a rather frustrated gesture with his sword. Their sword? Then they frown. Or rather, they look at their sword strangely, they give it a bit of a wave, rolling it around in their bony hand. Well, it seems like they can be distracted as well. That makes you feel a little bit better. Wait, no, they seem to have almost immediately put it out of their mind. Sheathed said sword, and following their now apparent leader, who is now waiting for both of you. The sword. Something about the sword was bothering them, and then they forgot about it. You go to draw your own sword, but you realize then that the bone that you had pulled from your finger on one hand, it's back. It seems to have reconnected at some point, probably when the other skeleton shocked you. In fact, now you feel better. Correct. All the shards that are you feel back where they should be. You go to pull the last bone off your finger again. No, you actually really don't like how that felt last time. Maybe later. Now you have a job to do. And that's right. You have a job to do. You feel this compulsion to do as you're told. What were you told again? Right, yes, go where the guard said to go on the corridor. Kill anything that isn't wearing the mark that you are. Right, the mark. You can still feel that, yeah. Pressing slightly into the fragments that are you, still seared into you. It feels far less uncomfortable than, right, you're supposed to be following. You don't want to get clacked at again. You follow after the others, and yes, no, the mark is far less uncomfortable than it was before, and in fact, far less uncomfortable than when you took your finger bone off. but you still feel it there. Not the distinct feeling of a handprint on the side of your face, nor a hand-shaped impression into your whatever it is that you have instead of a soul. But it is there. It's not searing as it was before. In fact, you barely really notice it. Perhaps one day you won't be aware of it at all. Yeah. One day. One day. You realize all of a sudden that you're only a few minutes old. You feel older, certainly. Too old. Or too young. There are so many things you wished you had done. None of them come to mind right now. So many things you regret never having done the time you had. Not that any of those are coming to mind either. Well, that's rather odd. You seem to have rather conflicting ideas of whether or not you're too old or too young. Well, now, hold on. Because the other skeletons, they seem to have some mismatching sort of parts. Perhaps the fragments, the parts of you, the whatever it is that makes up the you, maybe they're a bit mismatched as well. Well, that's interesting. You draw your sword. The frown, or what you have a feeling would have been a frown if you're on the face of your companion, if they in fact had a face, it got your attention, let's say. The gentle slide of the steel against the scabbard is just as satisfying as ever, even with an old blade like this. Have you drawn a sword before? Has a piece of you, perhaps, drawn a sword before? Well, probably. Surely everyone has. Right? How would you know? Wait, no, hang on. No, something about this isn't right. No, you frown down at the sword, wishing you had a brow to furrow. It's too heavy. No, that's not right. No, that's not right. This isn't right. No, swords aren't heavy. No, in fact, that's what people always say when they hold a proper sword. They're surprised by how light and nimble they are, but this is too heavy. You hold it at arm's length and you stumble, needing to widen your stance, not much, but more than you actually would. Oh, you're light. You're too light. Yes, right. Obviously, you're a skeleton. Swords aren't made for bare bones, as it were. No, they're made for people with flesh and sinews and eyes. How are you supposed to... And again, you start hearing some angry clacking sounds. At least this time you'd actually been following along, although you definitely hadn't been paying attention. You look up to find the other two skeletons, your comrades, swords drawn, and there's a zombie. There is a zombie. It's clear as day, though the light from the lantern behind you only casts the barest amount of light down the long corridor. You can see perfectly serviceably, apparently. Having eyes is no issue here, although the not being able to blink continues to trouble you. There is a zombie. Decaying black flesh and all stands staring at a lantern halfway down the long corridor. Not broken, the lantern, just inactive. Perhaps from what little resembles a mind within the zombie is trying to figure out the function of the thing. Perhaps it feels familiar to it. And it sees you. Through rotten eyes, somehow, which feels rather familiar. And it hates you. It begins stumbling towards you or your group, but its body is not working as it seems to expect. It falls to its knees, but it pushes through, trying to run, but managing only a hobbling jog. Your comrades hesitate, looking down at their swords for a moment. They're having the same thoughts that you were, but they surge forward nonetheless. That's a mistake. No, you aren't used to your bodies yet. You're being skeletons yet. To your balance, how the sword should fit in your hand. There's no cushion of your palm meat to settle it, only dry bones against the leather wrap. You're going to die, aren't you? You get a distinct feeling. Can you die? Is that a thing that can happen? You're not entirely sure about that. You don't know. If you couldn't die, then why would there be 3 skeletons for a corridor? While on that point, why would you need 3 skeletons for a single corridor? What had you been expected to fight? Would 2 have been insufficient? Oh no. One of your comrades readies themselves, taking up something like a fighting stance, but they tip forward. The weight of their sword, something trivial for a fleshy body, is a significant fraction of your and their body weight. The first skeleton is battered against the wall, its head clattering across the flagstones, but quickly rolling back to where the rest of its bones are, drawn back by the magic that binds the fragments together. The second skeleton lashes out in a panic, which is understandable. The zombie, which is barely able to control its own body, is still perfectly capable of, with a single arm lashing out, able to send a barely substantial skeleton, such as yourself, reeling across the corridor. And so the second skeleton lashes out in a panic. The blade, which hadn't torn away from the skeleton's wrist during the swing, which surprises you, had honestly thought that it might, now digs into the shoulder of the zombie, at which point your comrade's wrist does, in fact, separate from the hand, leaving the blade in the zombie with a fisted skeleton hand attached. You have no vocal cords, of course, but you do feel a distinct desire to laugh. Your first comrade, whose head had been flung across the corridor, now seems to have said head back on its shoulders, and is now scrambling for its own blade as the second skeleton tries to avoid getting dragged back towards the zombie by the magical attraction pulling it back towards its own lost hand. Well, that's interesting. Well, you're learning quite a lot here, actually. The attraction between the lost hand and the wrist seems enough to actually pull the second skeleton towards the zombie. Also, while you're here, while you do seem to be rather easy to knock down, you skeletons do seem surprisingly good at getting back up. In fact, that's probably why they sent three of you. Sent three of you to kill. That's right, yes. To kill all things in the corridor not bearing the same brand as you. You feel the command feel you again, the compulsion to obey. Although you do also note that when it had slipped your mind, it seemed far less important to you. You watch as your skeleton brethren do their best. You test the weight of your blade, you widen your stance, and then widen it some more. Each of your joints has a certain point that it will give out. You've established that relatively well at this point. That's all right, because, actually, someone once said to you, you don't recall, now that you think about it, though you are relatively sure that someone probably said something to you once. Who exactly you were at that time, that doesn't matter right now. If you use your full body to brace the blade, you can probably get a decent swing out of it. But the closing in and taking a swipe at the zombie, you're not used enough to your own balance to rely on it. What you really need is the zombie to come to you in a relatively predictable... You have an idea. The zombie turns to you with a sheer rage in its sightless and apparently perfectly serviceable eyes at the indignity that was you throwing your scabbard at it. Even undoing the knot that kept it tied to your pelvis was more educational than you'd like to admit. But you can feel the hatred rolling off the zombie. Hold on. You can feel the hatred rolling off the zombie. You hadn't really felt anything before, at least not as far as emotion, other than a vague intrigue with your situation, other than perhaps a tiny bit of mirth at the troublingly slapstick display of your comrades. Not that you would have done much better, to be honest. But yes, you feel the hatred rolling off it. Hatred, rage, indignity, fear, and despair. Fragments. Oh. Like the fragments that you're made of, maybe. Is the zombie... Perhaps the zombie is like you. Fragments of hate and resentment in the shape of a thing more than the thing itself. Well, now you're sad. Actually, you're not sad. You're not sure you can be sad, in fact. You wonder if you could be sad, would that thought have made you sad? The poor thing. It's another odd thought, really. But you feel another thread in there as well as the thing barrels towards you, its body fighting against it as much as anything. You feel pain. So much deep and terrible pain. It's all right. You brace yourself, carefully angling your sword. System notice. Skill reawakened. Mercy kill. Skill effect. No damage increased to target. However, physical pain to target reduced to 0. Mana cost. None. Stamina cost. None. Health cost. None. User note. It's alright. Shh. No. It's okay. It's over now. Optional skill alteration unlocked. Skill alteration, Mercy Kill. 2. Mercy Kill, a peaceful end. Effects. Increase critical hit damage by 2 times. Conditions. Qualifies for skill, Mercy Kill. Conditions. User must accept all physical and mental anguish upon themselves until expiry of the target. Mana cost. None. Stamina cost. 200% of remaining enemy stamina. Health cost. None. User note. This will rebound all pain, physical and mental, experienced by the target onto the user, onto you, including all pain of said attack and all sensations until the target's expiry. You will experience their death. You've never activated a skill before, but you know how, and you do so. You don't even hesitate. Your sword meets its mark, plunging into the heart of the zombie. And you experience death. End Chapter 1. Hello, I'm a shouty man, and I'm here to tell you about going onto my Patreon and maybe supporting some of the stuff I do. If you enjoyed this or any of the other stuff I do, have you considered giving me some money? Look, we don't have the creator fund or anything like that here in Tasmania. I don't make money from any of these sorts of videos, let alone something like this. But I sure would like to dedicate a lot more of my time into making things like this, original content for you, the good listener or viewer or whatever you are. I have about, that's 7 times this amount already ready to record, and ready to go. And boy howdy, if you'd like to support me in any way, such as giving me money, I sure would appreciate it. Thank you. Failing that, if you'd like to just go over to my link tree in the bio and just follow me on YouTube and Instagram and the various other things, I would really, really, really appreciate that. Thank you, dears.